the Licensing and Protection Committee meeting, Thursday, the 25th of January 2024. Welcome to today's meeting of the Licensing and Protection Committee and Licensing Committee. Before we begin the official proceedings, I would just like to draw your attention to the usual housekeeping arrangements. If you wish to speak, please can you indicate that you wish to do so to the chair. If you wish to speak, please press the middle button, which will turn green, and then again when you have finished. You will know when the microphone has gone live, as it will light up red at the top. Please ensure that you use both the microphone at all times so that this is to be picked up on the live stream. I'd like to now start with the official business of the meeting. Apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
I have apologies from Councillor Banks and Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. So now we'll go on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Are you all in agreement that I sign the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated, those being the 27th of September 2023? Thank you. I will now sign these as the correct record. Please bear with me whilst I do so.
Are you all in agreement?
So the next item, number 2, members' interests. Do members have any interests they wish to declare? No, thank you. So now item 3, air quality review and assessment. I now invite Kate Penn, Environmental Health Services Manager, to introduce this report.
Okay, so this report is based around a decision to revoke 3 of our air quality management areas. We continually review and assess the air quality within the district, measuring both nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, and currently have 4 air quality management areas, which were all declared in 2005 and 2006 due to nitrogen dioxide levels. We are proposing to revoke 3 of these. They are the ones in St Neots, Brampton, and on the A14 Hemmingford to Fence Stanton. This is being proposed as the air quality standards fall well below the annual objective level of 4 micrograms per metre cubed of nitrogen dioxide, which is set out in regulations. For St Neots, the most recent annual monitoring level was 28.2, Brampton 14.7, and the A14 Hemmingford to Fence Stanton 13. So there's been no breaches of the annual objectives for over 10 years, and the most recent year is well below the objective level. And the guidance provided by DEFRA states that in these cases we must revoke the air quality management areas. Revoking the areas won't change any of the monitoring we do, and the data will still be available on our website and in the annual reports that we produce. And if monitoring shows that relevant thresholds are being met, we would consider declaring the AQMA again. And there aren't any concerns that this is likely to be the case. So the committee has recommended to authorise that the Environmental Health Service Manager can take appropriate steps to revoke the St Neots AQMA, the Brampton AQMA, and the A14 Hemmingford to Fence Stanton AQMA.
Thank you, Kate. Do members of the committee have any questions or wish to make any comments? Yes, Councillor Ferguson.
So, having read this paper, I thoroughly support this measure, and it's the timescales are quite interesting. That these air quality management areas were put in place in 2005, which is when the government enacted new legislation or targets. So the intention was between 2005 and 2020, the government wanted to reduce the emissions of nitrogen oxides by 55%. I think what we're seeing in part is that's actually taken place. If you own a new diesel car, you find not only have to put diesel into it, but you get a tank to add blue in it, which is urea, which sprays into the exhaust gases in order to reduce nitrous oxide. I guess another potential source of this pollution is Little Barford Power Station, because you get NOx emissions whenever you get high temperature combustion. It's just nitrogen and oxygen in the air combining into a relatively toxic chemical, and that power station is also operating at reduced capacity compared to 2005. Now, whether that directly affects emission in the area, but nitrous oxide is a dense gas, which means that even if you discharge it via a plume, eventually it comes down to the ground. We can't say exactly if that's happening here, but that's another reason why those background levels have decreased. And I think it's just down to government legislation and more societal concern about the effects of these very toxic chemicals, which in fact kill people and cause lots of harm to people with breathing difficulties. So we should definitely keep on monitoring it. But I think this is reflective of a changed situation and the fact that the air in these towns is genuinely cleaner than it was when we introduced these air quality management areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to ask to approve the recommendations. Do we approve?
Can I have somebody to propose the recommendations, please?
Thank you. That's a proposal from Councillor Ferguson, and seconded by Councillor Cadwell. Thank you.
Are we all in favour? Thank you. Any objections? No, that's carried. Thank you.
So next is item 3, the monitoring report on the delivery of the Food Law Enforcement and Health and Safety Service Action Plan.
Sorry, it's item 4, the review.
Oh, sorry. Strike that. Sorry. Now we move on to item 4, review of the fixed penalty notices. I now invite Rob Mitchell, Community Resilience Manager, to introduce the report.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Afternoon, all. I think the paper is page 79 in your packs. So this is a review of fixed penalty notices across our district. Last year, DEFRA did national consultation around the amounts paid for fixed penalty notices around environmental crime, and the county, using a countrywide steering group, fed back its findings. The way that it's going to be moving forward for the county is that they've kind of adopted and come up with a method of delivering these fixed penalty notices, and they're going to go back to their relevant committees to present, like what we're doing here today. The reason for the fixed penalty notice review is, on previously, if I can take you to page 82 of the pack, that our fixed penalty notice was a one price fits all. What DEFRA has done is raised the actual amount from £400 on fly tipping up to £1,000. Now, from experience, we can go across the district and you can see fly tips of all different shapes and sizes. Some warrant that £1,000, some wouldn't warrant that. And we're looking at a tiered approach and introducing a tiered approach here today to almost allow the fixed penalty notice to fit the crime, which will also support anyone who has been, let's say, almost like a victim of those incidents or like duty of care, the ability to pay those. The other recommendation that we're looking at today is offering a discount scheme of 25% for early repayments, and I'll come back to these at the end of my summary. And thirdly, we're looking to extend the payment period from 14 days to 28 days. What we found within the role for the last 5 years, we sometimes get quite a few people coming back to us asking for extensions due to the fact that the period that we're asking them to pay over those 14 days doesn't land within their paydays or anything on those lines. So we're asking to change that from 14 days to 28 days to allow that month period to go around. So just as a bit of an explanation, as you can see in item 3.2, these are the littering fines that we currently have in place, where you've got littering for £150. None of these have got a discounted rate of early payment, and you've got 14 days to pay. The household duty of care, I'll explain what that is. It's where you've paid someone to take your waste away, but you haven't done the due diligence to find out if they are a certified or have all the right documentation to be a waste carrier, and then you find your fly tip somewhere out, and we come back towards you. And then fly tipping, which is basically someone dumping their waste and leaving the area, would be 400. So moving on to the tiered approach in 3.3. We're proposing that we have 3 tiers for littering. So tier 1 would be single items. That could be anything from chewing gum, cigarette butts, bottle, anything along those lines. We're looking at that being around £100 with an early discount of 75. Multiple items, that would be something up to a carrier bag size. So looking at your McDonald's bags, anything along those lines, or several items being thrown out of the same vehicle in that same period of time. And finally, your tier 3 being your large litter. That's anything up to the size of a large black sack, which is taken out of the vehicle and removed from the vehicle. Mentioned household duty of care. We're looking at that being raised from £200 to £400. What we're finding on duty of care is that people are using the duty of care excuse sometimes, where actually we believe that they could be the fly tippers. So we're trying to align it a little bit more with the actual fly tipping offences, and the duty of care, although sometimes it comes across as that we're punishing possibly the wrong people for not carrying out the due diligence, we are going to be carrying out a large media campaign on the back of this meeting to basically explain what people's duty of care is and ensuring that that's shared across the whole district. And then finally, the fly tipping one. This is the part of where several districts are obviously picking different items here. But what we're looking for is a tier 1 kind of domestic waste, which would be a car bootload, let's say, small car bootload, couple of bags, and household waste from 400. Then the next level of being domestic waste again, but this is going up to a van size of waste that someone's got rid of. And then finally, commercial. So commercial could be any size of fly tip, but it's where we can prove that they have gained financial gain to take someone else's waste and dump it on the district. That's where it gets the maximum fine of £1,000 due to the fact that it is that financial gain. They're the proposals. Like I say, what we're asking the committee for today is adopt the tiered approach, adopt the discount scheme, and adopt the extended time of 28 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob Mitchell. Do members of the committee have any questions or comments they wish to make? Councillor Ferguson? Okay.
So I've got a comment first and then a question. So I was lucky enough on Tuesday to spend the morning out with Ash, one of the enforcement officers or the team leader for the enforcement team, investigating incidents of fly tipping across the northern part of the district. So we went to Somersham, we went to Ramsey, and we ended up in Yaxley and Farset as well. The further with which Ashley and his team investigate fly tipping really, really impressed me. So it's not just a question of this stuff getting taken away every time you see it, which we do a good job of, and sometimes we do too good a job. But every time there's any evidence, then the team will go through it and try and find who's responsible for that. Typically, if it's going to be like household domestic waste which is being disposed of by a rogue trader, then the person who we're going to find is the householder through evidence of their addresses. But my feeling is that this is a serious problem in the district. I think we do a good job of dealing with it, but I think every resident in the district would agree that fly tipping is a horrible thing which we need to get rid of. So I'm completely in favour of more severe fines, even if that sometimes affects people who have unknowingly given their waste to a rogue trader and it ends up being fly tipped. I think the awareness needs to be better. So, I understand that that's recognition here as well, and I support that as well. So the tiered approach, I think, is really, really helpful. We did visit one, I'm not going to name the site, but one former industrial site, which was basically just a legal transfer station for rubbish. And, the fly tipping was immense, including a disused or a discarded cannabis factory with plants and switches and chemicals, all sorts of kind of DIY trade waste. And I was shocked by that. And it's something we have to do a better job of fixing. So increasing deterrence is a good idea. Sorry, that was a long comment. My question is, did we do any due diligence in kind of comparing the level of fines with our neighbouring authorities?
Yeah, so we I attend a monthly meeting with Countywide where all of my counterparts doing the same job attend it as well. And we spent a lot of time talking about what level of fine to set at. And one of the things we discussed quite at length was making sure that it wasn't cheaper to fly tip in one part of the county than another. For instance, we didn't want it to be cheaper to risk fly tipping in Huntingdon compared to, say, Fenland. So we really wanted to make sure that we were set at a relatively standard level. And I think we came up with a pretty good agreement across the county within some variations. We haven't come up with a complete standard simply because we have to acknowledge there's local differences. But we've pretty much across the board come up with the same tiered approach. Usually, so for instance, the 3 tiers across fly tipping we've all agreed on, with just some minor differences on how we define the tiers and some minor differences on the overall scale. But apart from that, we're pretty consistent across the county.
Thank you. Any more comments and questions? Councillor Criswell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, largely supportive. I echo a lot of what Councillor Ferguson has said. I think we've all got horror stories about fly tipping and areas of litter in our wards, and I have to say operations do a pretty good job of clearing up, and I've reported it. So that's great. What I struggle with is the 25% off for those that pay 14 days rather than 28. It does little benefit financially for this council for them to pay 14 days earlier. There's no difference in the deterrent value for littering by paying 14 days earlier. And I can understand a 25% discount for those who are less well off for a service that they have no choice in whether they take or not. They have a very clear choice whether they litter. So if they're hard up and don't want to pay the extra money, then don't do littering. So I really struggle with that. I would much rather it was a flat rate for everybody, and whether they pay within 14 days or 28 days is of little value as far as I can see. So watering it down just because some people might not be able to afford it when it's not an essential service that we're providing, to me is of detriment to the penalty that's deserved for committing these offences. So that would be my comment, and just some sort of an indication of why we think that's a sensible approach, please.
Yep, I'll answer that. So the reason we're offering the discount is to encourage more people to actually pay the fixed penalty notices to save both officer time and court time of taking the actual case for, let's say, a littering fine or something that goes to court. I fully understand what you're saying. Absolutely agree. It's more just the incentive to try and get more people to settle these cases sometimes outside of court. So we don't have to obviously go through many hours of sort of court preparation and everything on those lines. But the comment is noted, and obviously I'll leave it to the committee to make the final decision on that one.
Sorry, just wanted to quickly add as well, there was a mention about the financial incentive. The DEFRA guidance is really clear that local authorities aren't to gain financial incentive from fixed penalty notices. So that's one of the things we have to be really mindful of when discussing fixed penalty notices. So this isn't a money-making opportunity. This is a punishment and deterrent for the offence. Just wanted to add that one as a bit of clarity as well.
Yeah, we'll come back.
So presumably, if we did make a surplus on this, we could just recycle that into the operations team clearing up the mess. So we still wouldn't make a profit. We would just, increase the work we do in clearing up fly tipping and litter. That would be allowed, presumably.
Yeah, I'll just press on. Yes, the only thing that the fixed penalty notice can be used for is to go back into the prevention, detection, and investigation for environmental crime. That's what all fixed penalties would go to, and that would include any clearance costs as well. So yes, is the answer.
Thank you. Councillor Cadwallader.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I really support the penalties. However, there's some people who are known, especially in my constituency, and they keep on doing it, and the council is very good on clearing it, but there is no signage. So I don't know if it is possible for signages to be put on the areas so that people know the consequences if they keep doing it.
Yep, we do have signage. It has to depend on the furniture that we're allowed to place it on. So it depends on who owns the area for us to put the signage up. And we would do work with the registered social landlords as well to place signage up within their areas as well with permissions. Any hotspot related locations that fly tipping, please contact either myself or Ash. We will do everything we can to make sure that the relevant awareness is placed in those areas.
Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, very good report. Welcome it. I think we do need to enforce this, and I think this is going in the right direction. Personally, I think we should charge more. To be fair, that's my own real gut feeling about it. I just want to ask a couple of questions. Really, we talk about our neighbouring authorities. My ward borders Northamptonshire, Peterborough, and I know some people border Bedfordshire. So, does that also include conversations that we've been having with other local authorities outside of Cambridgeshire? And also, it's okay issuing fixed penalty notices. Lots of people don't pay them. Is there a risk that because we're increasing costs, that we're going to get a risk of higher number of non-payments, really?
So the in terms of bordering, we absolutely have had the conversation with Peterborough City. I know your area quite well, and a good probably the majority of the fly tips that happen in that northern corridor of the districts comes from Peterborough. I would almost say all of them come from Peterborough to a great extent, especially Facet as well. As you know, pretty much all evidence is pointing towards stand ground a lot of the time. So I've had a lot of conversations with Peterborough. Unfortunately, not so much with Northampton, but certainly with Peterborough, definitely. Very complicated area for violent crime. Yeah. Absolutely.
And for the second part, for the like I say, the levels and people not paying because we've slightly increased. What we're finding if we do go to court is that we're using this as a template for the courts as well to basically match our fine levels. And we've known in the past that courts have gone underneath what we've requested as part of payments. So also with us increasing our FPNs, it also allows us to go to the court saying this is what we've offered as a fixed penalty notice. The person has refused to pay, so we ask that you also consider this on your verdict on the payments to the person and the fines and the penalties within courts. We end it on the court, but we always go for 100% cost, and that includes clearance of fly tip, it includes officer time, it includes legal time as well. So we always go full costs.
Thank you. Councillor Terry.
Slightly out of my remit. I think it's more of an operations question, but I think with Claire taking the notes on that one, I'll go to the head of operations. I'll ask him that question and get that fed back to you, if that's okay. I can't answer that myself now. It's not something that we cover, but we'll certainly get that answer for you.
So we're waiting for the government to make his mind up.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councillor Costello.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. I was just wondering on how many fixed penalty notices do we issue in a year? And also, how do we let Joe Public know that there are fines for fixed penalties? Do we advertise in newspapers or something like that?
Yeah, so fixed penalties noticed throughout the years will depend on the offences and the amount of evidence we can find and gather. I think 15 has been issued for environmental crime around that number so far in this financial year. As Councillor Ferguson alluded to earlier, the actual investigation and finding the relevant person is a difficult process. It's never easy just to find that person who's fly tipped unless you've got an eyewitness, if you've got a registration number or you've got details within the fly tip to find and chase. But we do everything we can to find those. So the numbers aren't massively high. And obviously we'd love them to be increased, but it all depends on the weight of evidence and the the actual quality of evidence that we get to follow that up. Second part of the question was, Can you just remind me of the second part again?
How does the general public get to know about these fines?
Apologies. Yeah, we do a lot of publicity. We'll do at least social media every time we go out and find a large fly tip. We'll go and put it out via HGC channels about what the costs are, what this is. We advertise every single successful prosecution that we go out to do, and highlight that person and what the actual prosecution levels were. We can't go out and publicise that we've given someone a fixed penalty notice because it basically a fixed penalty notice gets rid of the criminal offence basically. So we can say we've issued a number of, but we can't say Joe Blogs from number 23 has had £400 for fixed penalty. Sadly, we can't do that. So yeah, ultimately we do social media. We highlight it on a yearly basis. We place it in the corporate plan. And we basically highlight it in those manners. But the main part for us is we like to create awareness of what you should be doing rather than what you shouldn't be doing. And that's what we keep pushing on a quarterly basis.
Thank you. Councillor Boutel.
Hi. Do you think it'd be advisable to get your parish councils involved in the advertising of this? Because when you get it down to that level, you'll reach many more people and make it locally aware. So could we put that as a comment?
Yep. Well, we would put down because we put our comms out through HCC comms, so we'd like to hope that it goes through to the parishes anyway, and then it's automatically shared. If that's not happening, I'll sort something out with Ash, and every time that we do a media out, we'll make sure it goes out to all the relevant town and parish as well.
Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Do you get repeat offenders, and if so, would they automatically go to court?
Yes, we do get repeat offenders. I've mentioned in the report that there are certain circumstances where we won't even offer a fixed penalty notice. Not just for repeat offenders, although that's one of the categories, but we will look to for the most appropriate response to the offence. And sometimes a fixed penalty notice, as Rob alluded to earlier, being a civil way of dealing with something isn't necessarily the most appropriate way. And the most appropriate way is to let the magistrates make the decision and give us the ability to have potentially a more severe punishment. So for repeat offenders, for large-scale commercial operations, which we had quite recently, we'll always look to go to court and then publicise it, because one of the big benefits we get from that is being able to name and shame. And usually the repeat offenders are the pernicious Facebook advertisers who are undercutting the legitimate traders and victimising a lot of people and fly tipping all over the districts. And those are the people that we look to mostly go to court for. And then we can say, look, Joe Blogs has done this on 4 accounts. We've got successful prosecution, and we put that on Facebook, and hopefully we'll hurt the trade there.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
So just to expand on a couple of those points, the point about Facebook is a good one, because I think as councillors, many of us are active in our local communities on social media, and you do often sometimes see these obviously rogue traders offering to shift rubbish about. And I think it's our responsibility to report that to Ash and the team. This is just not only a reactive service, they also investigate people and sometimes try and get ahead of the fly tipping and prosecute it. But I want to give you an example about a fly tipper in Loves Farm, St Neots, where I live, last year, who who was reported by my wife. Now, the team didn't give preferential treatment because she doesn't share my surname, so they couldn't possibly have known. But that gentleman, I don't call him a gentleman, but he's probably not, Mr. Jabber of Robinson Way in Huntingdon, was fined £2,000 in Peterborough Magistrates Court, made to pay £1,800 cost, and also disqualified for driving for 28 days. Disqualified from driving for 28 days. So, when we do get prosecutions, it's up to us, and I think we do a good job of advertising them, definitely put them in front of parish councils. So I think everybody needs to know, it's not the pernicious fly tippers, are we going to get to them? No, but it's householders who use these services who ultimately are going to get themselves in trouble, fined, perhaps get themselves a criminal conviction. They're the ones that need to know. So I think anything we can do to support that, and definitely the media team and the comms team at HTC will always push these out, because the local press loves a good fly tipping story as well.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments and questions? Yep, Councillor Ferguson.
Sorry. I just wanted to say, go again. Tuesday morning, going out with Ash and just understanding the breadth of our enforcement powers, how seriously the team take them. It was really impressive. I don't think that team gets enough credit. I was surprised by exactly how much they're involved with. So it's not only fly tipping, it's antisocial behaviour. It's we spent a lot of time sticking stickers on abandoned cars and making sure abandoned cars are picked up. It's violent dogs, stray dogs, and loads of other stuff as well. And so they do a great job and don't get much recognition. I don't want to make them blush, and I can't quite see them out the corner of my eye, but I just want to say thank you. And any of you who have the opportunity to learn more about what the enforcement team do, I thoroughly recommend taking the opportunity.
Thank you. I just have one comment and question to make as well. Due to the changes of our waste disposal and the green bins and the garden waste initiative, are we going to continue to, how often are we going to continue to monitor fly tipping, and can you reassure us?
I think daily. So we are quite a reactive service. If someone reports there's green waste and green bin waste dumped, then it will be investigated. We investigate every single fly tip that comes over our threshold. So if there is an increase of green waste, we'll be sort of highlighting that to our operations team and explaining that that's the case as well. So as that progresses, we certainly will be monitoring it. So we can reassure you that anything that comes through, any information we have to follow up, we will do.
Okay.
I just wanted to add as well that this is to a certain extent conjecture, but also based on the experience of doing the job. I don't anticipate there suddenly to be a mass influx of green waste fly tips. We may see an increase, but I don't expect it to be significant. And that's simply because most people are law-abiding citizens, irrespective of any kind of angry post you might see on Facebook in relation to the new green bin decision. Most people do follow the law, and I think that's worth noting. We will, as Rob said, absolutely keep note of it, but I would be surprised if there's any significant increase.
Thank you. My comment would be to for the quarterly and the next sort of review. It would be really helpful to have that information so we can compare. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Oh, Councillor Patel.
Yeah, I just was interested because Councillor Ferguson brought up dogs. And I was interested, as we're moving the goalposts on fly tipping. I mean, dog fouling is actually huge in the area. And I don't know how many prosecutions we've actually brought. But as an incentive, do you think it would be good to raise the fining of dog fouling? Because I know that in our village, it's absolutely unbelievable. Most of us have got ring bells, and we still can't find this idiot that goes up and down the village with his dog, letting the dog do everything it wants outside our houses. So I just wondered if that was in the pipeline at all.
Yeah, we brought it to the last meeting. We increased the public space protection order information and rules. There's set amounts that we can only do through the ASB legislation, so we have to stick to what the legislation guides us for that. We are absolutely dedicated on the whole of dog control and dog fouling. So if there's any information you want to share with the team, and especially the people around they're the best eyes and ears we have, and all we need is a identification of person, identification of dog, rough timings that person's out and about, and we will go and investigate and we'll hover. So that's pretty much any information you've got, we will follow up.
can I just come back with one more question? Because we have loads of signs on the lampposts, etc., warning of the fine, but they're out of date. I mean, I think I picked mine up about 5 years ago. Have we got anything new in the pipeline that we could put up?
Yeah, we've just brought out a new one to basically it's a barcode one, QR code. Got old school, and that basically highlights all of the rules of the new PSPO, what we've placed in there as well. If you want to sort of just let me know at the end which location, and we'll ensure that we go around. So any hotspot locations you have for dog fouling, we'll put new signage up. And we'll replace old ones that are faded. We just need the information, and we'll go out and do it.
And again, use your parish councils; they'll put them up for you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Something that Councillor Ferguson said about social media and people advertising. Is there something that we could have, like an infographic or something like that, we could put onto these posts and say, just make sure they've got X, Y, Z before you book them?
Yeah, that's the one we push out about every 3 months. So it's a blue one. I'll ask our comms team to send it out to every single town and parish just to place out. But yeah, it's a duty of care list. It's almost like a best practice to do list. So for example, take a picture of the vehicle, check their waste carrier license, ask them where they're taking the waste. Really sort of, and if you can highlight all of those things and save any messages that you've had on Facebook from to and from. So there's a load of things. And if you supply our investigations team with that information, you won't be the suspect. You will be classed as the victim. That side of it. So yeah, no problems.
Councillor Ferguson.
Sorry, Chair. I'm feeling more like former Councillor Chapman, if you know him, commenting on everything several times. Just two points that have been raised. So when we were out with the team, Ashley stuck up at least 6 or 7 stickers in areas. So we're going around doing that proactively. Absolutely should do more of that. So please report them. In terms of the comments about tracking the amount of fly tipping, I think that's really interesting as well, because we're about to introduce this green bin charge. A potential concern is that it will increase the amount of fly tipping as well. So I think it would be good for us to monitor that in some formal way. I report the quarterly business statistics overview and scrutiny. And I think actually, adding that metric in, if we can do it in a meaningful and coherent way. I know that Ashley tracks the number of fly tipping incidents that you investigate. There is also fly tipping incidents which are cleaned away by the ops team before you get to see them, which is unfortunate, but that needs a bit more joined up thinking at the council. But if we could think together to have some sort of meaningful statistic that we could report, I think that would help, wouldn't it, with understanding what the consequences downstream of the green bin charges, and help to understand how much of a problem it is in our district locally. So yeah, if we could do that, or we could think about how to do that, I'll take that to John Taylor as well.
It's actually that's some information which we have got a record already of, and there's a requirement for us to present that data to DEFRA, and DEFRA then publish that on their public website. And this is nationally. They have a leaderboard for local authorities for it. That data is captured by Justin Clark, the team leader for the street cleansing team. And then Justin and I have a shared spreadsheet where we compare the fly tips that he clears and the fly tips that we investigate. And that is broken down by waste type. So when I said earlier that we would absolutely monitor if there's any increase in green waste, that's not a onerous task because we already have in place the mechanisms to capture that data.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. Councillor Costello.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about social housing. You mentioned you worked with landlords. Is it not working?
Yes, okay.
Shall I start again? You mentioned that you work with landlords from social housing. We have a real issue in Ramsey. I don't know if you're aware of it. Slade Dyke. That it's constantly getting rubbish thrown in it from. I'm not saying the people from the social housing, but around that area. In that sort of situation, would you actually put a leaflet through letterboxes to alert the residents of that area of the fines that they could incur?
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to do targeted campaigns on particular areas. And I know Slade Dyke well was the part of the reason for the flooding you had a few years ago at Christmas. A lot of that was, as you say, just a build up of litter in Slade Dyke. You've got essentially two housing estates either side of it, with gardens backing up and all kinds of waste falling into it, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely valid comments. It's I think the housing association around Muir, isn't it, mostly? So I'm more than happy to thanks for the recommendation. I'll make that kind of on my to-do list to have a kind of targeted thing around Slade Dyke specifically, because we can quite happily point at the consequences for the actions outside of the criminality. Your local area has been risk of flooding because of the littering into that dike. So the consequences of the environment crime is really tangible there.
Okay, thank you. And any more comments or questions, and then we'll move on. No, great. So now we need to for the committee to approve the recommendations. So we need a proposer and a seconder.
To propose, Chair.
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Ferguson to propose and Councillor Boutel to second. Thank you. Is everyone in favour? Thank you, everyone. That's great. And there's no objections. No. Okay, great. So now we're on to item number 5, the monitoring report on the delivery of the Food Law Enforcement and Health and Safety Service action plans. I now invite Kate Penn, Environmental Health Service Manager, to introduce the monitoring report on the delivery of the Food Law Enforcement and Health and Safety Service action plans. This is a standard report and covers the second and third quarters of 2023 to 2024 year. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. So I'll just go over a few sort of headline points from the monitoring. So if we start with food hygiene, in quarter 2, we carried out 143 inspections, and in quarter 3, 176. So far for the year, that brings us to 504 inspections, which shows that we're on target to meet the predicted activity. We had 116 new registrations in quarters 2 and 3, which is pretty much on par with what we would expect. And again, that's a entirely new business, or maybe an existing business changing hand and a different person being in control of that, which would mean it needs to re-register with us. We've still got the alternative enforcement strategy remaining at a red status. However, I'm pleased to say that we've contacted 157 businesses so far to check whether they are still operating, and then we can update our records to show whether they need to move forward to an inspection or whether they've ceased trading, and therefore we just close them down on our system. So we are beginning to get through to those category businesses that we have, the lowest risk ones that we haven't been able to so far. So we undertook 17 compliance checks in quarter 2 and quarter 3. This is bringing us slightly above the predicted level of activity, and that's generally because the businesses that we've been inspecting are the ones that may not have had a food hygiene inspection for 3 or 4 years due to the pandemic and the inspection programme being suspended. In terms of our income from export certificates, this is a little lower than anticipated because we haven't had as many requests for export certificates. We can't influence this, and it's pretty much determined by what manufacturers are making and where they're exporting it to, but we have obviously adjusted our predicted income accordingly in terms of our budget. We have had a few more requests for rescores than we anticipate, and again, I think this is because it's the businesses that perhaps haven't been inspected for a little bit longer than normal, and they're not quite getting that 5 that they want, so therefore they're addressing the matters and then coming in and saying, actually, can we have another inspection so we can try and get that 5-star rating back. We've again continued to take part in the sampling programme. This time the topics have been salad and salad components, and also cooked, ready to eat, sliced and cut meat, which we've had a few unsatisfactory notifications, which we had to pass on to the Food Standards Agency because the product was made elsewhere. But it was, it was good to take part in the survey so we can highlight things like that, and also then provide advice to the business, do further sampling, just to check that everything's back to standard. You'll also see that we've had an increase in level of activity regarding infectious disease control. This was down to there being a cluster of cryptosporidium cases in the eastern region. So the UK Health Security Agency asked us to carry out questionnaires with any cases within the Huntingdonshire area, which means basically phoning up people trying to identify a source, which then the UK Health Security Agency take back to try and work out if there's a common link and if they need to declare an outbreak or not. As I understand, there wasn't anything linking the cases, it was just a spike that didn't have a particular source. Moving on to health and safety, most of our health and safety work in quarters 2 and 3 was reactive. We had 26 accidents reported to us, and of which we investigated 9. The criteria for investigation is largely based on the local authority circular provided by the Health and Safety Executive. So we'll look at what accidents fulfill that. It might be because it's a certain type of injury or it's a premises that we've had a number of concerns about, so therefore we need to investigate. We've also had 75 other service requests that responded to. Majority of these, again, were licensing consultations where we look at the public safety element and provide comments accordingly. We also undertook through summer proactive visits to some of the larger events taking place in the district, and that was through the Safety Advisory Group, where we provided advice to event organisers and promoting public safety. We also issued 17 skin piercing registrations for both premises and practitioners within the district. So this ranges from someone doing tattooing to semi-permanent makeup to ear piercing, and they all have to be registered with us. So that's one of the things that officers will go out and inspect just to check they're complying with the relevant bylaws. And that's pretty much all of what we've been doing. So any questions that we can go through?
Thank you, Kate. Do members have any questions or wish to make any comments? Councillor Ferguson?
Just to say, this is especially on the food inspections. This is a good report. Considering where we were a year ago and kind of recovered from COVID, it's really good performance from the team. Who I know you've had some troubles with sickness and absences as well. So thank you very much for getting this back on track, and it makes my life much easier when I'm reporting the corporate report. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Slow? Sorry, go on.
Mine are just factual questions. And 511, you give examples of the different categories, but there's no mention of category B. And I'd also like to know, at the bottom it says there are 66 food businesses outside the rating programme. I just wondered what type of food business they were. I'd like to know what category B refers to.
So the categories are based on a risk score. So the highest risk are category A, and then B and C. So I can't give you a particular type of business that falls into category B, but it may be, so some businesses that serve vulnerable people, such as older people or young children, like nurseries, they will typically fall into category B because they attract an additional scoring element, if that makes sense. And the businesses that fall outside will be places that you don't typically go to sell food, but they may sell a few sweets at a counter of another type of premises. So we would go and inspect them, but because it's not a place where you would go for that, especially, they don't attract a rating. So it's all the Food Standards Agency guidance that we implement there.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No. Okay. Are members happy to note the contents of the report? Yes. Thank you. Take that as a yes. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to item 6, the scheme of delegation to officers. This item is in 2 parts, A and B. The first part will be introduced by Claudia Deef, Community Services Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair said, I'm Claudia Deeth. I'm the Community Services Manager and have responsibility for the services that you've heard about today, which is really positive. The purpose of this report, it's something that's been here before, so is a historical item, and enables functions that have been issued to the Licensing and Protection Committee to be passed down to officers. So some of the examples that Ash and Rob were talking about in terms of their enforcement activity, the work that Kate and her team does, and when Michelle comes on a bit later, the licensing side of things, those functions sit here with the committee. By enabling those to be delegated down to officers means that they can make those decisions and use the legislation that is available to them within the relevant acts. So as I said, this function has been in place for some time. The purpose of bringing it here today is that there's been a number of structure changes within the organisation that meant there has been a change in people, but also a change in job titles. And we just wanted to update the scheme of delegation so that it's current and so that we have the permission to utilise the legislation listed within the table under those job roles. Purpose being, one, that we're enforcing it correctly within the processes and procedures that we have, but also when we then take it forward, perhaps for court proceedings, that we're not challenged in terms of the delegations and authorities that we have to use those powers. So it's really just to get that scheme of delegation updated and proved. There's no new powers in there. It's same as what has previously sat in there before.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any questions or wish to make any comments? No, thank you. So I ask the committee to approve the recommendations. Do we have a proposer and seconder? Proposed by Councillor Howell and seconded by Councillor Bywater. And do you all approve? Yep. Okay, brilliant. So that is approved. So now to the second part, and Michelle Bishop, Licensing Manager, will introduce.
Thank you, Chair. It's pretty much the same as Claudia said. There's no real updates in terms of legislation. I've taken out just a couple of bits of the animal welfare because there was some old acts, as in horse riding establishments, that have been now repealed. So basically taking those out, adding in the animal welfare under the 2018 Act. Apart from that, it literally is just due to structure changes within the organisation. So no real updates. And, just for clarity, you'll see that there is obviously two reports. So this one, from a licensing perspective, deals with things like animal welfare, taxi, street trading. And then obviously in the next meeting, we'll talk about licensing, act and gambling. They have to go to two separate committees. So just for clarity there, in case you're thinking, got the same report coming forward. So, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any questions or wish to make any comments? Councillor Costello.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment here. I just couldn't read page 121, and I think you'd need a very good magnifying glass in order to read it.
Apologies, that's just the way it's come out on the printer. If you're looking at it on an iPad, you can make it bigger, but it's just the way it's come out on the printing copy.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? No? Okay, that's fine. Where are we? So does the committee approve the recommendations? Can I get a proposer and seconder? Proposed by Councillor Clark and then seconded by Councillor Howell. Do we all approve? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so that is approved. Now we move on to item number 7, Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy. I now invite Michelle Bishop, Licensing Manager, to give a verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see there's no report in your pack for this one. This is just a verbal update to say that I'm pleased to say we have now got to the end of reviewing the taxi policy. So it is going to be going out for consultation within the next couple of weeks. No longer than that. We've just got some final tweaks to do. That will then be going out to obviously all the trade. It's going out for an 8-week consultation. And then any responses back from that obviously will be back to the committee. I think it's the May meeting. We'll be bringing that back to you guys to obviously discuss and approve whichever policy we go down. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of the changes now, but what I can say is that we've taken on board obviously the comments of the trade, comments of yourself in terms of we looked at things like the age policy, tying that into the air quality, looking at the emissions. So those sorts of things we've taken into account. Once the policy obviously is online as a draft version, I'll make sure that's sent to everybody because I would appreciate obviously your comments, passing that out to anybody as well, because I think it's good that we get that transparency. And I think what we've tried to do with this new policy and the changes is make it that little bit clearer than it was, and clarifying some of the grey areas. Whilst I appreciate legislation is always going to have some grey areas, we've tried to make it as clear as we possibly can. So fingers crossed. But it's just really a verbal update to let you know that's coming out shortly.
Thank you. That's great. So now we move on to item number 8, the suspension and revocation of Hackney Carriage and private hire licenses, decisions under delegated authority. I now invite Michelle Bishop, licensing manager, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. As you can see from the report, we've had 12 vehicles in the last quarter and 2 drivers that we've had to take action against. In comparison, that's slightly lower than what we've had previously. I think I'm sort of pleased to say that the message is getting out there to the trade that we will only accept fit and proper people to be licensed driver with us. And have vehicles. So I'm really, as I say, pleased to report on that bit. And obviously, you can see that the split there, obviously the vehicles is slightly higher than the drivers. A lot of that is down to vehicles that involved in accidents. We need to suspend the vehicles for the insurance companies to then allow them to have a replacement vehicle on the road. So it's just obviously in terms of the legislation. Looking at section 3.2 of the report, you'll see that obviously we made an officer decision to refuse a new driver due to items that was disclosed to us at the time. That's obviously now sits with the court. It was due to be heard in December. Unfortunately, the court didn't have time to hear that, and it's now back with them. Hopefully for hearing in February. So I should be able to give you an update at the next meeting on that one. So, but happy to take any questions.
That's great. Thank you, Michelle. I must remind members when asking questions that we are in a public session, so please keep questions of a general nature. If they require a more detailed response, please request further information outside of the meeting. Do members of the committee have any questions or wish to make any comments? Councillor Ferguson.
Simple one. What's a dual driver?
So a dual driver is both Hackney Carriage and private hire. So we basically offer 2 types of license, dual and then just private hire.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments or questions? No. Are members happy to note the contents of this report? Are we all in agreement? Aye. Oh, Councillor Kedua. Yeah.
I'm just proposing to recommend the report.
Thank you. With this one, I think it's just an acknowledgement that we're happy with the report. So yes, we'll take that. Thank you. So thank you. And with that, I declare the meeting closed. I now like to move on to the meeting of the licensing committee. So though slightly behind schedule, the meeting of the licensing committee for Thursday, the 25th of January, 2024. Do we have any apologies? Are there any apologies for absence?
Apologies from Councillor Banks and Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. Now on to item 1, minutes of the previous meeting. Are you all in agreement that I sign the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated, those being the 28th of June 2023? Thank you. Now, item 2, members' interests. Do members have any interests to declare? Item 3, scheme of delegation to officers. Michelle Bishop, licensing manager, will introduce.
Thank you, Chair. As per the previous update, this report is obviously due to officer changes within the organisation. Again, there is no changes to the legislation. It sits with Licensing Act and Gambling Act, and that's all that's on this report. And a small bit of scrap metal again, because it sits on a different committee. But as I say, no real changes to the legislation at all. Been in since 2003 and 2005.
Thank you, Michelle. Do members of the committee have any questions or comments they wish to make on this report? No. Okay. Now I ask the committee to approve the recommendations. Do I have a proposer and seconder? Proposal from Councillor Howell and seconder from Councillor Bywater. Do we all wish to approve the recommendations? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Now to item number 4, licensing subcommittees. I invite members to note the report. So report noted.
Any comments?
Any comments, questions? No. Oh, Councillor Ferguson.
I've got two comments. I think with your, if you indulge me, perhaps discussion points. The first one was that I chaired one of these committees, and I was quite surprised when I turned up to be told that certain people who were representing or objecting to the application didn't want to appear on the live broadcast as well. And in the event, those people didn't turn up, and so we didn't have to make that decision. But it made me feel quite uncomfortable, because I do believe in the principles of openness and transparency and democracy. Our meetings are open to the public. We don't have a legal obligation to broadcast them, but we do. And I can understand that people might be uncomfortable being on video, but not showing parts of the meeting because people felt uncomfortable with it seemed strange to me, because anybody could come to one of these meetings and see it. So it's really a request. Well, I'd like to hear the views of other members of the committee, perhaps, but also a request, perhaps, from the monitoring officer, that we could get some guidance on whether we can do that or not. Because at that moment, I felt quite relieved that they didn't turn up, because I wouldn't have to make that decision. It would be good if we had a standard policy on these things. I think that was the first point.
We can take some guidance from the monitoring officer, as you suggested.
And the second point is just, and I know we do a great job of reaching out. We make sure that the applicants advertise the licensing notices to at least the legal guidance. But there's been a few occasions where parish councils have been unaware about licensing applications. I just want to ask for a special effort to make sure that parish councils, ward members, are always aware of these things, because there's nothing worse than turning up at a licensing committee, which is, you think would be quite contentious, but we don't hear from the public because they haven't heard about it. So anything we can do I think the parish councils are the most appropriate way of getting that message out. So just a request that we continue to engage with parish councils and ward members, so they're always aware of any licensing applications, whether contentious or otherwise, in their wards. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members have any more comments to make? Councillor Boutel.
Yeah, I'd just like to say these people do a great job, and they do make the parish councils aware. And if the parish council has any questions, trust me, they're on it.
Yeah, can I just come back? And it's also the case that quite often that people will claim they weren't aware, and I understand some of that. But as long as we're doing it, and we're doing it to the best of our abilities, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Brilliant. Any more further questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you. And with that, thank you. That I wish to declare the meeting closed, and we'll just wait for the live stream to end.